Lakshman drew a line and asked Sita to stay behind. She wouldn't listen. Had she obeyed his instructions, then there is no story of Ram for the whole world to listen. Ram, Lakshman, and Sita in the middle of the jungle, surrounded by animals and uncertainties. Suddenly, there is a golden deer hopping around, and that's reason enough to suspect the surroundings. Both male members are out of sight. The older brother went behind the golden deer, and the younger brother went behind the older brother, and Sita is all by herself, alone. She didn't understand there is a conspiracy playing. Now, what would be the best thing for her to do? You know, just obey the instructions given to her. Those instructions were well thought of, suspecting the surroundings. Just obey the instructions. Sita didn't do it. It's her disobedience caused the mess up. She was tricked or trapped or blackmailed or cheated, and that's not the point. She didn't obey Lakshman's orders, and that is the point. All else could have been handled. So it's her sheer disobedience gotten her into the trap. Let's put it that way. Now, there's another story in English literature. The captain of a warship had an 8-year-old son. During school holidays, the son used to go to the ship along with his father and spend the holidays with the sailors. I don't know how far this is legal, but that's the way the story goes. During the wartime, this is a dangerous practice. The son is very familiar with the sailors, and they used to have fun on the deck while the captain is busy with his work. One day, suddenly, the ship came under enemy attack. The attack was so sudden and so intensive, the captain and the crew were too shocked to react, and that put them at a disadvantage. And in the meantime, the captain brought his son to one particular corner and drew a circle on the floor. Then he said, "Look, this is the safest corner on the ship. I want you to stay right here until I come back to get you. No matter what happens out there, you stay right here." The attack became all the more intensive. They were losing the fight. The sailors were running for protection. The captain received a bullet on his head and he collapsed. The son didn't know about that. Now, a few sailors came to the boy and said, "Look, the situation is getting out of control. You come with us. We will take you to safety." But the boy said, "My father asked me to stay right here. He is not only my father, he is the captain of the ship. I grew up as an obedient child. I cannot disobey his orders. He will come to get me. You please go." The sailors insisted, but the boy wouldn't budge, so they had to leave. They lost the fight eventually, and the ship sank, and the little boy went down along with the ship standing inside the circle. Pity. He should have gone with the sailors. He should have understood the situation. His obedience killed him. Let's put it that way. Sita got into trouble because of her disobedience. The boy died at the age of 8 because of his obedience. Now we have $1 million question in front of us. To obey or not to obey? In one situation, it helps. In another, it kills. One Tamil poet wrote in beautiful lines, meaning, Lakshman drew a line and asked Sita to stay behind, and she wouldn't listen. Had she obeyed his instructions, then there is no story of Ram for the whole world to listen. The lines and the circles are not drawn by God. When you have to obey, you obey. When you don't have to obey, you don't obey. Obedience is circumstantial, situational, conditional. There is no hard and fast rule to govern your obedience. Obey the law of the land because you are obligated. Obey the superiors because you have committed to work within the framework of a structure and hierarchy. Obey your parents because they are your parents. Period. And for some reason, if they think you are not good enough to think for yourself, then they do the thinking on your behalf. Obey them. Obey someone if you are convinced about his expertise, wisdom, experience, and intentions. There is nothing called unconditional obedience. Nothing at all. It may sound like we are going against the age-old thinking of obedience. That's not true. Maybe we are going against the age-old thinking that older people are always wiser. We are going against the age-old thinking that obedience is a great virtue. Maybe we are going against the age-old thinking that disobedience is disrespect. No, not at all. Socrates spoke about civil disobedience tradition. He disobeyed the civil authorities of Athens, and he openly told the court that he would disobey again under certain circumstances. He used disobedience to express his opinion. Mahatma Gandhi said when he introduced the non-cooperation movement against the British, he said, look, just 150,000 British police simply cannot control 350 million Indians if we refuse to cooperate. Meaning, we can be cooperative even in non-cooperation. Non-cooperation is another form of disobedience. Disobedience has been the non-violent weapon of revolutionaries and radicals. I think we have come a long way in evolution. You don't need rigid rules, regulations, religions, or Vedas to determine your course of life. You are empowered with education, civilization, and common sense to govern your life. Disobedience is no disrespect. It's an act of faith. It's a choice. It's an attitude. It's an expression. Obey when you have to, and don't obey when you don't have to.